work together as a unit so that we are sharing very similar plans. So as we share students through CTE or other modes, that our plans will not, students won't be affected because we all have different plans. So one of those goals is to try to be very similar as other districts across the county, which for us has been very helpful because we get different views, different perspectives in those conversations. So with that being said, there's a couple other things I want to share with you. We'll go through all the agenda items once again. There are links that are view only, so you can't make any changes. So you can open up that link and actually see the documents that's attached. Once again, any questions that you have, please use the chat room, the chat space. And our two presenters tonight are Mr. Mark Kurland and Dr. Michael Dunn. These two have been the leaders in this work. They pulled the teams together. All the team members have been active participants. But with any type of work and any type of team, you do need someone who's coordinating that work and pulling things together to make sure that things have gotten done. So Mr. Mark Kurland and Dr. Michael Dunn will be your two presenters tonight. And we'll all work together to try to answer your questions. Also, if there are any other district staff members or district leaders who are on this team who may have additional information to offer, I do encourage you to chime in when appropriate and give your response. The other thing is that we want to deliver as much accurate information as possible, which goes back to my point that we may not be able to answer your question tonight, but we will get accurate information to you as quickly as possible. Okay, we don't want to put any rumors out. We don't want to put any misinformation out. So as much as we can, we'll be as accurate as possible. Given the data that we have, given the information from our State Department that we have, and given information from our other leaders within the federal and state governments. Okay, so without further ado, I am going to let Mr. Kurland take over.
Now you can hear me. Sorry, I was muted. Sometimes I like that. Welcome, everybody. Good evening. Again, on behalf of the committee, thank you for tuning in tonight. I'm showing on my screen a minimum of 113 people that are listening in or watching. So thank you for showing your support and trying to get some answers. We're going to just kind of work through the agenda. And the first thing on the agenda was the Berrien County Return to School Roadmap, a draft. And just real quick, if you're clicking on that, that's fine. If not, I'm just going to talk about a few of the items. These were agreed upon items by the area superintendents as a starting point, that all the districts agreed they would at least start here. And then if they worked up from there, that was okay. So the first thing is protective equipment, personal protective equipment. And a lot of these things came state quite right from the state requirements. Face coverings will be worn by staff at all times. Pre-K to 12 students will wear a mask on the bus. Facial coverings will be worn in the hallways and common areas. And the only time they can take them off in the hallways or anything like that is if they're in the lunchroom when they're sitting down eating. Okay, K through 4 in our district are considered cohorts, meaning they're in the same classroom. They do not necessarily have to wear a mask in the classroom at this time, and that may change depending on what the governor's been saying and so on. Personal hygiene, obviously we're following all the requirements that are set down by the state. We're actually putting in extra hand sanitizer stations in all the classrooms and so on. Spacing, movement, and access. The idea from the state is to space the students as far apart as possible. You'll hear out there social distancing, and the idea is to try to be 6 feet apart. There probably isn't a district around that can do a continual 6 feet apart. So all the plans will say to try to put them as far apart as possible. Okay. No actual hybrid plans in the county, which would be something like go to school 2 days with one group of kids, another group of kids coming for a couple days, and then maybe they're at home for a day. So no hybrids like that in the district. One of the big things that you'll see across all plans in the county is no visitors past the office except for extenuating circumstances. And I know that will be tough, but we're trying to keep the amount of people into the buildings at a bare minimum, and that's across the county. The other thing is that if you're coming into the office, you'll be asked to wear a mask and sanitize your hands, and you may actually just get into the vestibule area if you're picking somebody up. We're working in our district because we have the vestibule areas to have people sign in and sign out there. It's not that we don't want you there, we're just trying to make it safe for everybody. And when we talk about screening of students, everybody in the county will be following what the Berrien County Health Department recommends for implementing protocols on students and staff. You will not see anybody in the county taking kids' temperatures before they get on the bus, before they enter the buildings. That is something that the health department is encouraging parents to do at home as part of your wellness check, and so we're going to encourage that. All district personnel will use an app where they have to log in their information, how they're feeling and everything before they come to work. Any protocols dealing with students and staff and whether they're positive cases and so on will come down from the health department, and the superintendents were strongly in favor of that. They wanted to make sure that we were using the doctors and their recommendations, not necessarily what the school thought was the best interest. So all of that stuff is coming from the state. Food service and gatherings and extracurriculars. Part of the plan that they agreed upon was no indoor assemblies of more than one class, to suspend all off-site field trips unless it's part of your curriculum. And so you may see some kids from Buchanan going to the school farm because the elementary buildings do that. Athletics, all the districts are going to follow the MHSAA guidelines. And if we have any shared time programs, that would be like our CTE and things like that, we will follow all. That will continue to go. Obviously, if there's anybody that was quarantined, everybody in the district would know those type of things. Any communications as to people that are ill and so on come from the protocols for the Berrien County Health Department. So just wanted to give you an idea that the districts have been very strong and very kind of staying on the same page with respect to following those different areas. And before we get into the actual plan, I just want to kind of reiterate maybe something that wasn't said, but when the district team got together, we've talked with unions, we've talked with kids, we've talked with a parent advisory group. When Mrs. Robinson came on board, her and I had a short meeting to discuss how we were going to move forward. And the number one priority was the safety of students and the safety of staff, and hoping to make parents feel as comfortable as they could with sending their kids to school. I have 4 kids, 2 of them at an elementary level, 2 at a high school level, and so I completely understand the concept of trying to make it as safe as we possibly can for kids and staff. So that's where we're coming from. As we move into the next area of the agenda, it's our 3-page roadmap plan. And it actually, we updated it just a little bit yesterday, and so that's why it's posted in the agenda here for you to look at. In our building, we have 2 forms of instruction that we'll be looking at. If we're in phase 4 and above, okay, which is what we're in right now, we are looking at this point in time today, we would be in face-to-face, which means your kids would be coming to school, okay? And so our plan that we're working on right now and have been working on is set up that way, and we'll talk about that a little bit in more detail. The other option, okay, is remote learning, okay, which means we're not in phase 4, we're in phase 1, 2, and 3. And if that's the case, then we would go to remote learning, okay? I'm going to let Mr. Dunn, Mike Dunn, talk about the option 2, the remote learning options that Buchanan has. So, Mr. Dunn, I'll let you take it away.
Well, good evening, everyone. So for the K4 model, we have the ability to do a remote learning opportunity for students with our own staff. And I want to apologize on behalf of all of us. We would like to be able to do that in a 512 model. Logistically, in a secondary model, you cannot, in a school this size, even in a large size, be able to fully staff that with your own people. And that is a struggle everywhere. So K4 happens to lends itself easily if there's enough participation, because it's a self-contained classroom. Once you get out of a self-contained classroom and they're changing classes, that creates logistics to a huge degree that we can't solve. So that's why we're able to do, say, a K4 remote option with our own teachers. We've been listening and I shouldn't say listening, we've been hearing you. I've spoken with over 20 parents. Our other principals have been hearing you. We've been looking at Facebook and the comments, and one of the key consistent pieces we hear over and over is that, one, we didn't do the greatest job when we went into the pandemic in March, and we all know that, and we own it, and that it's almost unheard of to say that we're going to sit a kid in front of a computer screen from like 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., especially with a lot of our families having to work. I mean, we have lots of two-income families. They've got to do that. And so they know that's a struggle, that even if they're with grandma or a babysitter, it's just not going to happen. And they need to be able to have the ability, if we're going to do remote learning, to be able to have time on their own. So we listened hard to that. And the model we created is a balance. And I'm going to use two big words and I'll explain them. So we know you need asynchronous, which is where you can do it on your own when you need to do it. And then you need what's called synchronous, time where it's real live in the moment with the teacher. And so we have a good blend, we believe, in our model for that, because we know that for those working moms and dads that you're going to need the time when you get home to finally help and work and digest some of the material. So in the model, we have opportunities for reading and reading support, and then we've got math and math support, and there's some writing and specials. And the idea is that these would be individualized lessons that you could see from the teacher that are either pre-recorded videos, resources from other places, the presentations and slides that would be guided. And so that could be done with your child on your own. And then we have specific times that would be scheduled with the teacher that they would then meet, work with in a small group or one-on-one, and help to reinforce the learning, answer questions, deepen the learning, because we know you just can't do it all by yourself, and we don't expect that. What we expect is giving you the opportunity to take that in, and then we'll help you work through it. So that is the K4 model in a nutshell. For 5 through 12, again, we would love to do it on our own. The only option that we have available to us is through the Buchanan Virtual Academy. That's exactly the same type of model. It is asynchronous, where the child is doing it on his or own time and at his or own pace, submitting through a program, and I do believe it's Edmentum is the learning program. And then they have a mentor teacher that then comes on and works with your child. And so you get some of that synchronous piece where you can get some help and support. The big issue is it's not for K4 because we really don't have sports and athletics at that level. But for 512, if your student signs up through Buchanan Virtual Academy, unfortunately, they are not eligible to play in sports and athletics. And that's a pretty consistent theme across the county as well.
Mr. Dunn,
Mark, did I get?
Yep, just a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, we did post a link to the K4 remote, a copy of it, just so you would kind of be able to look at it afterwards and kind of see what the idea of what was going on each day and some of the expectations and so on. And then from the idea, the next thing on the agenda, Mr. Dunn, are you okay with you all set with the K4 piece?
Yeah, I think we need to remind people we're going to need if we are still going in person, we are going to need a decision by August 21st, and we'll get that survey and link out again because there's going to be a lot of logistics that come after that, with moving kids around and getting kids enrolled, and then looking at class size and assignment of teachers. So once we know, after the 21st, so we will then be in contact. And then after that, they will start remotely, and they're going to sign up for a commitment of a semester. That was one of the questions in the chat. It is a semester commitment. So this is something to not take just lightly. They're not going to come in and out of the program, and that goes as well for BVA. It's a semester commitment.
I think a couple questions that came up during the parent advisory that we might as well address right now. First of all, anything in this agenda will be left up on the website, so you'll be able to go back and click on any of the links, including the elementary remote learning plan, the Buchanan Virtual Academy update. But a couple questions that I saw pop on the chat room there. A couple of the one of the advantages if you're in the BVA is you still are eligible for the Buchanan Promise, okay? And then if a couple of the disadvantages, like Mr. Dunn said, is you're not allowed to participate in MHSAA athletics. Honors classes are not available. CTE and band are not available, and it's not staffed by Buchanan teachers. There actually is a mentor from Buchanan that I know. One of the things, so that hopefully that answers a couple of your questions as to some of them that came up on Virtual Academy.
And one more, Mark. So, and it's a great question. So what happens if we start with in-person and then we have to shut down for a reason and go to remote learning? Because that is a reality we'll have to face, I think. Not just maybe this year. We need to start thinking that pandemic can happen at any point. And they've been preaching to school since early 2000 for us to start thinking this way. So we have the plan for K4, the remote learning piece that we've started for K4 is going to be pretty close to the same rollout for if we have to move to a full shutdown with remote learning. It's going to be very similar. Shelby Beasley, the middle school principal, has created her 5-7 remote learning plan similar to the K4 model. That is not finalized yet, but it's very close. And the high school is still tweaking theirs, and that's because they have so many more moving parts than we ever do at an elementary or even a middle school level. But they are looking at that, and I think Monday is our tentative due date we've given them to please try to have something to start with. So that is that's what would happen if we had to move into remote learning at some given point, be it because we had too many cases of COVID or whatever may happen. And then with technology, this is another real quick, I think we can try to answer some of these in a moment. If you are a K4 remote learning student, you're going to get support with technology through our tech department. Unfortunately, 5 through 12, that is not something our tech department supports. That's because it's through Buchanan Virtual Academy, and you'll need to go through that IT support piece.
One of the other questions there, will the students be given a laptop for remote learning? At the middle school and high school, they are 1-to-1, and so they will get a Chromebook. If we do go to remote learning, they will be allowed to take that home. At the elementary level, we are working on having at least one Chromebook per household at the elementary level.
And I want to clarify that. I would like to clarify, if we are in person and you choose remote learning, you are on the hook to provide your own technology if you're K4. If we are forced to remote learn at that point where every student, then we will then work to do it, as Mark Herland said, to at the K4 level, at least one per household, and then the 5 through 12 is a 1-to-1. And we've been working with our tech department, and I can't thank Mrs. Robinson enough. She's been so supportive in our efforts to look at how we can bridge that inequity in technology. Kudos to her. She's just dynamite. So we're looking at that. So maybe it might be one per household. We might be able to get, for a larger household, maybe another device. but she's working with us to see what we can do, because we know that inequity still exists.
Okay, we're going to continue on with page 2, and then we'll come back to questions, and at the end, we'll try to give you some time to ask some questions if we have time, okay? State requirements as to the personal protective equipment. One of the things that the questions out there is, what is a face covering? It has to cover your mouth and your nose, and the face shields that you see do not count as a mask. We already talked about who has to wear them and where. 5 through 12 have to wear them all the time in the classroom, in the hallway. K4, if they are in a cohort group, which means they are in their classroom, okay, with their group of 25, at this time, they're allowed to take them off. That may be changing, but that's where it is as of today. As to hygiene, we already talked about that. Using hand sanitizers, the district has bought tons of hand sanitizers. We just found out today, you heard about those wands that are kind of used to help disinfect things. We bought 6 of those. We talked about spacing and movement, of trying to space kids as much as possible. One of the things that is big is that if your child is riding the bus, they will have to wear a face mask. You are allowed to get your own face mask, but they have to wear one on the bus. We will have some on the bus if they happen to not have one. We'll have hand sanitizer on the bus.
Mark?
Moving on. Yes.
Just a reminder.
Go ahead.
The guidance is a clean, and we know at K4 how it gets, but a clean facial covering every day. And that's going to be tough, we know, on our families. But the idea is that it needs to be some sort of clean. So if you're reusing a mask over and over, to make sure you're rinsing that or washing it out with some soap and water at night, letting it dry, if you're not using a disposable one.
I seen the question there real quick. I saw it pop up. Did I say no face shields, only a mask? That is, you can wear them. You have to wear a mask if you're a student or a staff member. If you want to wear a shield, you can do that. One of the things with respect to the face mask, if for some reason you have a medical issue, we have to have a doctor's note. We understand that. But we are going to strongly encourage that even if your child has a doctor's note and cannot wear a face mask, that they wear a face shield, and we will provide the face shield. We're doing the same thing for our staff. Again, we're trying to make sure it's as safe as possible for everybody. We talked about large gatherings. Right now, you can't have more than 100 people out at an outdoor facility. Lunch. When you come down for lunch, on your way down, you have to wear a face mask. When you're in line, you have to wear a face mask. Once you get to the table and you sit down, you have to wear a mask. You can take it off while you eat, but then you have to put it back on. Obviously, the buildings are trying to move kids as far away from each other as possible, either that or having them in their same cohort group. Recess will be outside as much as possible. Cleaning, we kind of talked about that. We've got extra cleaning supplies on hand. Staff will have cleaning supplies in their room. We talked about screening of students, that will be asked to be done by the parent. The positive cases, we talked about that. There are protocols coming down from the health department that we'll be following, and it'll actually be posted once we actually get the final updated ones. If for some reason we have to go to remote learning, we're going to follow what Mr. Dunn talked about with respect to the K through 4, and then we'll move up to the 5 through 7 and 8 through 12 once they are completed. Mr. Dunn, did you want to add anything from those 3 pages we talked about?
I think we hit the big ones. You did good.
Yes, you guys. Dr. Dunn and Mr. Curlin, would you all please delineate to what remote is versus what virtual is, so that, because we're using 2 terms, remote learning and virtual. So could you please clarify that for the group?
Mr. Dunn, do you want to take that?
Yep. For remote, that is K4. Well, let's make sure we clarify. So we're talking about when we are in person. So when we are here in person at the school, are able to be in person at school. Remote pertains to the K4 program, and virtual is the 512. when we go, if I hope not, but when we if we have to get closed due to COVID, remote still continues with K4, and then those students 5 to 12 who are in person will then pivot to a remote learning, very similar to the K4 model.
Still taught by Buchanan teachers.
Right. And that's the biggest difference to make, is that when you are a 512 virtual through Buchanan Virtual Academy, that is a non-Buchanan teacher. When we pivot to a so instead of being in the schools and we have to be out of the school and it's not in-person learning, that becomes fully remote learning, K to 12, with all teachers being Buchanan teachers.
Mike, I'm going to address something that showed. One of the things says that in the version that we posted maybe yesterday or the day before, the first update that we put out there in end of July said that there was a chance of participation in sports, but we have updated it, and that's the August 5th update that's now showing in this agenda, and then we'll post tomorrow again, shows that athletics is not available to BVA students.
Okay, and families, I just want to cut in here. I appreciate all of the questions and comments. And one of the things we have to remember is that this virus continues to move, and we have to respond in a way that supports, number one, the data and everything else, like I said before. So I'm going to say that the documents that we put out are fluid. They may not stay the same. We have to change based off of what the information that we have that comes down from our State Department, from other conversations across the county, from updated information. So we're going to try to keep the plans as close to what we put out as possible, but that is not realistic because new information continues to come out to us. So just please continue to have an open mind and be patient with us, because we do want to provide the best and accurate information for you. And we're getting it out as soon as we can. As soon as we get information and we digest it and we process it, and we're going to quickly update our plans and our website to show those new updates and results. So please just keep that in mind, that these documents that we're putting out, we're just trying to make sure that you have as much information as possible, as quickly as possible, but they are fluid documents. They may change at the drop of a hat, okay?
Mike, is there anything you wanted to add before we go to some of the questions in the chat and try to answer those?
No, just as Mrs. Robinson said, we do work really late. If you ever drive by Moccasin the last 2 weeks, you'll see the light on. So I'm just saying we try to update as much as possible. And I saw there's something in the chat about Berrien County Health Department having some guidance released. That's totally new. That probably happened within 24 hours if it happened, because we try to get and keep, as Ms. Robinson said, we're working hard to keep things up to date, so it will be fluid and work from the best knowledge that we have.
All right, let's go with some of the questions. One of the questions has to do with when can you switch over from in-person to distance learning? Is that final? If you're talking about BVA and versus coming to school, that's a semester-long commitment. No band access in BVA. We'll try to give you a chance at the end to ask some questions. Let's see. How long do you have to wait to get the work done? So when you talk about how long to get your work done, I think once that's finalized, that'll come out in the plan. I know that at the elementary level, they're looking for kids to work daily and check in with teachers and so on. We talked about a laptop for remote learning at the elementary level and how that was going to work out. One per family, maybe more if there's enough.
Again, that's Mark, remember, that is if we are moved to remote learning.
Yeah.
If you choose remote learning to start when we're in person, you're on the hook for that.
Our curriculum's different for in-person versus BVA. Yep. BVA, it's its own platform, the Edmentum platform. In-person at school is going to be our normal Michigan curriculum.
Mark, the standards though, so what is required by Michigan as far as the standards, those are still the requirements.
Kid care, that's something that I don't know that we have a decision on right now. That's something that I put down for us to talk about. Will tablets be acceptable for K4? If you're talking about if you were at home or doing the remote, I would think that as long as they can get to the internet and get to Google, Google Classroom, which is going to be the platform, I would think they would be okay. I would think that would be something that we could definitely check.
The Amazon Kindle tablets tend to not work as well.
Okay.
From what I've heard from our parents, but most every other tablet seems to work as long as it can get to internet and work on a Google Suite platform through the internet.
See, on the schools level, what would be the outcome if one student got sick? So this one is probably going to be a tough one for some people to understand. The school is not necessarily making a decision as to when they're going to shut down or close. That is coming from the Barron County Health Department. In consultation with the school, the superintendents have kind of relied on the expertise of the doctors and the health department, and so they are working on protocols as to what it would take to shut down a building, maybe just a building, or maybe the entire school district. That is not something necessary that will be in our hands at this time. It'll also be in consultation with the governor's office. As of right now today, sports are on the table and being played. I know that we're practicing and other districts are practicing. And so as of today, I can say yes. I know that MHSAA is meeting regularly kind of to decide. We already talked about, we updated the BVA point with respect to athletics.
We'll check the webpage though. I'll add
Yep.
that to the list tomorrow to make sure everything's coherent.
Yep. The one dated July 29th or 30th did say that, but we've had a change. Let's see. What about the middle school? Will fifth grade have their own desk, own school supplies? Will they have their own desk? Not necessarily. There's tables there, and they'll be spread out as much as possible. As to own supplies, they will try to have as much of their own supplies as possible, but if you want to send some, you can do that. Okay. I think we're going to put out a suggested list of supplies if that's something you want to do.
And then we're going to work, building principals talked about that today about what Mr. Curlin said. We're going to work to try to give you a small suggested list and then work with, our teachers about trying to get what we can. We are limited in everything we do in education, but we will work hard. I mean, we're really good about turning out on a dime to get what kids need. So that's going to be a community partnership at the very least. So we'll get it.
Mr. Dunn, do you want to talk about the sharing of lockers? I know, like at the high school, as of right now, I don't think they're going to be using lockers. I think middle school kids all have their own individual lockers, and so they'll be asked to put their stuff in the lockers. I do know that the middle school is looking at a schedule where the kids aren't moving around as much as possible if they can, but I'll let you address the sharing of lockers at the elementary level.
So unfortunately at the elementary level, we don't have the same space, and they do have a shared locker. And the best thinking we have right now is that instead of having the kids bring all of their items into a room with 20 to 25 kids in the room, to minimize the amount of possible exposure and to help with contact tracing, having the shared locker makes it easier because it's only two people sharing the locker, or at the younger age, like a cubby. And so the idea would be we will work our best to kind of stagger some of that, to be able to say maybe locker partner A, go get your locker, and then once they come back, locker partner B, go out and get, so they're not kind of all at the same time, same place. Otherwise, what we have is we have everything in the room. The rooms are small as they are, and then that limits the amount of ability to space. So we're trying to balance lots of needs and guidance, and then think about, well, who had contact with that backpack, and there's 22 other kids in my class. So it's easier to be able to say, okay, if a child was to get COVID and we had to contact trace, we could say, okay, who's the locker partner? We know that. Well, where do they sit at lunch? We know that. Who do they play with at recess? We can get that. Who do they sit on the bus with the assigned seats? We can get that. Who's in their class next to them? We can get that.
The next one I see that I don't think we've answered is, are there unlimited spots available in BVA? Yes, it is. There is. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Does that include floor hockey?
Well, we
Good
will
question.
get back in touch with that.
Yeah.
But if floor hockey is an indoor sport, so to speak,
Probably not going to.
So
may not be going.
Probably not, based on the when we closed right before March. When we closed, there was in February we had floor hockey going, and they canceled that last tournament or so going on. So we'll work with the floor hockey board and them, but to get a definitive answer. But I make a bet that's a no.
Next one on there is penalizing kids for weighted GPA classes. I'm not sure what that is. That's BVA doesn't have the honors classes. I checked on that today. Okay. Okay.
It says, will K4 have recess, art, music, gym, and other classes they normally have? Again, I like the thinking. To help minimize the amount of exposure, just for those who may not realize, we have shared specials teachers with art, music, PE, and media. So in a given week, those 4 teachers would have anywhere from 650 to 700 contacts total in the week with students. That's a lot of contact. And so to minimize that, we put our best thinking forward. And we're going to do 3-week rotation so that we can minimize the number of students they come into contact with, as well as it keeps them cohorting where they keep together, so that if I am teaching 3rd grade, then my 3rd graders would have art for 3 weeks, while Mr. Curlin, who's teaching 3rd grade, his kids might have PE, and then after 3 weeks they would rotate to the next special. Yes, for those who do math very well, that means in a 9-week period, you would not get all 4, but we don't issue grades. That's the beautiful thing at K4. We do not issue grades for these subjects. So in the whole 36 weeks or close to 40 weeks of school that we do, that evens out to an even rotation with 3 weeks, while minimizing the amount of contact. So it's a big benefit to our teachers.
How do I sign my son up to go to school, not online? If your child was in Buchanan last year, you can just, as we get closer to school, when Power School opens back up, you'll see your child's schedule. You'll be able to just send them to school the first day of school. There's not a problem. If you're new to the district, in about a week or so, you can contact the high school guidance office, and you can set up a time to come in and enroll your student. You can actually enroll them right now through the superintendent's office. Let's see. So what are we supposed to do if we have a high schooler and we don't want them to do in-person classes, but they're not being offered, but such electives are not being offered virtually? Unfortunately, there isn't an option. You're not going to find, honestly, there's probably not going to be too many options anywhere besides a virtual academy in Buchanan or other districts. We're going to look into kid care. So the question about K1 students not wearing masks in an individual classroom, isn't this exposing each child in the room to all contacts? The research out there is saying right now that the younger the kid is, they're not as susceptible, and we're just following, as of right now, what the guidelines are put down from the state.
And I want to clarify, this is something that keeps, and I get it, it keeps resonating and coming out. potentially we would like everyone to mask all day, every day, right? That's what, I mean, that's what we know to be true in the guidance. But the guidance that we get from CDC and our own health departments, the idea of cohorting, when you know you're going to be with a select group of people for a period of time, so far the best knowledge is that they don't have to wear a mask, especially when it's kids who are 10 and under. So again, that's what the research and data is bearing out right now. And as Mrs. Robinson said, that may change. There's more coming out. This is research that's based from South Korea and Norway and Denmark, because they didn't close as soon and they have used the database of their students in schools. But now, as you see across our own states, with schools re-entering, we are now getting collective studies that are being done, and we'll have better data that will come out, and that will inform, again, this is why this is fluid, it will inform our thinking based on the best knowledge base, which is why it confuses people and why there's a lot of concern about, well, what's really a fact or what's really true. Well, we're learning as we go, and that's how true learning happens. We don't proclaim, no teacher proclaims to know it all, and so we learn as we do, and we learn as we go. So that is the thinking, that if you are going to be in that cohort with those age groups for that amount of time, and it's limited in exposure, you can unmask.
Clarify again how long you're in. If you're in person, you want to change to remote at the K4 level, you would be in there for a semester. Requirements for floor hockey, I'm not up to date on those, so that's something we'd have to find out.
Minimal number of students, we're still working that out, right?
Yes. So if you have any interest in that, please make sure you fill out the survey online. It was in the first document. We will get a resource page up there by Monday sometime that would have that link again. It's also in the update there listed. It's called the 2020-21 BCS Enrollment Elective Form. You can click on that link and fill that out. If you don't have access to a computer, you can contact the superintendent's office, and they will do the survey over the phone for you and collect that information for you.
And the second question is then the what if it's not met. Mrs. Robinson's been working with us about what plan B and C and maybe D, we've been thinking out loud together as a team of what those might be. But we're not, I mean, I don't want to speak for her, but for the team, I don't think we're ready yet to say, this is what those look like. But I don't want anyone thinking like, oh, you're just being reactive. No, we've been doing a lot of proactive thinking. And a lot of times when you're a proactive, innovative approach, you don't put everything out at once, because you have to have time for everything to percolate with that creativity, make sure we get the best options for our kids. So we are thinking and working on that very hard. And we might have some option, and we'll leave it at that, right, Mrs. Robinson?
South Bend, Elkhart, and Penn are going straight e-learning. They are not having in person. That's a comment. That's what they're doing there. As of right now, in Indiana, as of today in Michigan at 6:45, Berrien County schools are either face-to-face or in remote, or virtual. Meet their teacher in person. Do remote learning kids get to meet their teacher in person before starting? As a matter of fact, Mr. Dunn, that was discussed a little bit today. So
K4, K4, if you choose remote learning to start with K4, we've built in an actually daily check-in. That's a requirement, and there will be actual office hours that those teachers will keep, and there will be a lot of time so that they can start doing some of that. It will be remotely, but they will build and work that in, because I think what you're getting to is it's relationship based. That's how we know kids learn, grow, and get better. It's always through a relationship. And so if you don't have a relationship, how can you expect them to be engaged and learn? And so it's a little tougher on a remote platform. but because it's an actual Buchanan teacher and we know that we can make that happen. That's all. That's what
One of the
best I can
questions,
say to that. I think with the 512, if you are virtual through BVA, that's that key piece of that mentor teacher of making sure you reach out and getting to know your mentor teacher.
so when you see some of the questions being answered on there by Wendy Murphy, I want to thank her for answering some of the questions just in the chat. She's actually one of the teachers at the elementary level and the union president, and she's a member of the core team that's working with the leadership team to implement some of the ideas that we've been talking about tonight. So thank you for that. Will you be able to provide at some point before the deadline passed a remote response, what the average class sizes are looking like? I would think we would be able to do that. Yes.
Yeah, we will be transparent. It's just a matter of knowing what we know.
And once again, if parents can quickly, and efficiently fill out that form, that gives us pre-information to help us decide better. So please spread the word to all parents, asking them if they've completed that form.
And I'd reiterate, especially at that K4 level, we work hard to really make sure we match teacher to student and student to teacher, making those relationship-based decisions so that they have the best year possible of learning. And so when you start having students move from the in-person and do a remote learning, that means we're going to have to look where they were in a class list and figure out what is remaining. And then we'll have to go back quickly to the drawing board to say, okay, now how does that play out? So we can, again, make another best decision of who gets who in class, because we want to make sure that we just don't want to lump them in a class just because that's the way the numbers work. I don't want to operate, I don't want to call out an Indiana school, but they tend to work once you get 29 kids, the 30th kid, boom, they have a new class. Well, that's not how we operate in Buchanan. We operate with a student first mentality of who is best fitted to work with that child with what we have. And so it is important that we get those responses early enough. We push that out. I'll say we worked hard to make sure to push that out to the 21st so people have time to think, but that's a quick turnaround for us and we'll make it happen. But that's the logistics behind the scenes that most people don't see and know of what we have to do to make sure we are still student first.
The next question I see in there is, how's the middle school structured? Fifth grade is kind of like an elementary classroom. Those students are in a self-contained classroom. Okay, but because they're at the middle school with 6th and 7th graders, they are going to be wearing their mask all day just to be consistent. They do have at least maybe 1 or 2 rooms that have desks, and other rooms have tables. And so I do know, because I attended their meeting yesterday, they were asking for some extra desks or extra tables if they were available to try to spread kids out as much as possible. They do not share lockers at the middle school. They each have their own individual locker. Let's see, the next one. Are there old high school desks that can be moved into the K1 classes to separate the kids from the round table? I think that's being looked at. If we have extra desks available, they'll try to separate the kids as much as possible.
I want to reiterate, Mark, having come on board a year ago and we're moving some desks, for school furniture is built by level. And so just because we have desks for the high school does not mean they fit appropriately for the elementary based on size or even lowering it. They only go down so far. So if you have ever worked with a little kindergarten first grader, they're not real high. They sit just above the ground. And so those desks may not always be able to be lowered and be at the appropriate height, as well as those chairs. Because the high school is set for more of an adult when they make the furniture. So
that divider question, Mike, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. I'm trying to think of. We're looking.
Yeah. Okay. So dividers are not a requirement. Okay.
Right.
And to be honest with you, we may not be able to get the dividers. I'm just going to be straight up forward and honest.
Yeah. I mean, it's right. And for anyone who's 5th grade on up through 12th grade, that's why they're always masked in every classroom everywhere. I mean, that's where what it comes down to. What we are particularly, I think we're exploring, but I don't know that we can commit to it. What for like the small group, when a elementary teacher is working with small group, and some of the discussions we've had today was we have to just rethink some things, because instead of with small group and teaching in front of the kids, you have to learn to teach from behind the students, so you're not in their direct path, and that's a little, it's hard. Everything's harder, but because you're used to doing it one way. But the idea is that there are ways to teach where we're not always in the direct path. And then some other thinking that we keep forgetting to talk about when we teach, especially the little kids. If we learn to teach above and more standing at times, we're above the airflow of them. So I mean, we forget that they're little and their airflow comes out and falls. It's just like everything else in there. It goes out and falls eventually. So if you're above, it makes it even better. So that's why trying to teach from behind and being above makes that a little safer.
Let's see. Can someone explain why Color Guard got canceled and band is still going on? To the best of my knowledge, and I'm going to make a note so we can double check on it. To the best of my knowledge, Color Guard is associated with marching band, and marching band competitions, I believe they were canceled, to the best of my knowledge. Band will be in school, and so that's why band will still be going on. I could be wrong, so that's why I put a note in my notes to check. Mrs. Roberts, did you have any?
No, from my experience. So we'll have to double check of why the Color Guard was canceled, but they're usually hand in hand, Color Guard and marching band. But we'll get if there's anything additional that we need to add to that, we will definitely get that to you.
Mr. Dunn, did you want to take that?
Yeah, I was going to say,
Christina, for kindergartners.
Yeah, if Christina could put her email or email one of us so we know how to respond back to her, because we need to follow up with her. I just want to make sure we don't leave that hanging out there. I want to make sure she personally gets. We can figure out how to contact her. You said, I'm sorry, Mark. What was that?
The question about back to school night for kindergartners.
Well, K4, and I think we're thinking even 512, because of the governor's orders about the number of people you can have, and please correct me when I'm wrong. There's I have enough guidance to go through, so and less sleep. So I think it's 100. I think you can't have more than 100 that's outside and 50 inside. So with that kind of gathering, we know that is going to, after being here, you all are champions. You come out for these things. I've never shook so many hands, kissed many babies. I can't tell you as a new guy how you guys respond as a community. So because of that sheer amount of support and the numbers coming out, we know that that's just not a reality. And so we're working, that's our next hurdle, is how can we do a virtual launch? And we've just started the talks. We will get deeper into that so that we can have that out there for people to see. Like, for those who may not know, I did a video for the incoming Ottawans about who is your new principal, and did that in May. And so, and I think that's out there on the web. So the idea is that, and if not, I'll share it. It's on YouTube. But we will, that kind of format. We want to share those kind of things to get people acclimated, because we know they need to see, they need to put a picture and a face, to all that. We know, we get that, but unfortunately, it'll have to be virtual based on the guidance from the government.
Will 6th and 7th graders be changing classrooms as they normally would? We met today, and Mrs. Beasley, the principal, was talking about her possible classroom setups or whatever schedule, and she's looking very strongly at possibly doing some type of block scheduling where kids wouldn't be moving as much in 6th and 7th grade to kind of help with that transition time. They might be in a class maybe for almost 2 periods a day, and then only see certain classes one day, certain classes the next day, to try to help that.
And I want to caution, she's still exploring that and working with her team. And that's another fluid piece that might change, but they're trying to work to do what's best for those kids at middle school. So there's still some hurdles there. So if for some reason they can't flesh it out and you hear, oh, they're not doing, I don't want anyone getting upset, because as Mr. Robinson said, we are in a fluid motion. We're trying to get you the most and best information as we have it and being transparent in the process.
Will there be open houses for 5th grade and 8th grade? I think that goes back to Mr. Dunn's discussion before about possible virtual meetings and so on still being looked at. Thanks to Ms. Farrell for saying fall band competitions were canceled. So that kind of helps us maybe with the marching band. Let's see. Oh, 11th grade supplies, that if there's a supply list, that would come from the high school. Fifth grade are required to wear face masks in the classroom. That was a district decision. Okay.
And Mark, for K4, the times that students will wear a mask will be if they're in the hallways, in their transition period. They'll have to wear it before coming into the building, when they leave the building, and then in their specials classes, because we have five, most people don't know, we have 5 sections in a grade level, but only 4. Sounds like a Common Core math lesson. So we have 5 sections, but 4 teachers. So what's going to happen is that means there's going to be a mix. And so because of that, they have to mask when they're in a specials classroom, unfortunately. We just don't have that ability to have a 5th section of specials.
What are the technology constraints preventing middle school and high school remote learning by Buchanan teachers? Has nothing to do with technology. It has to do with certification of teachers. At the elementary level, a K4 teacher is certified in the 4 core or can teach the 4 core. At the 6th, 7th, and above, each person is individually certified, like math only, ELA only. They can't teach more than 1 class. There's no marching band right now. Regular band has not started. That will not start until school starts.
Yeah.
Open lunch, 8th grade. That's a discussion that's ongoing right now at the high school. Let's see. Will they not be? The other part of that comment is not wearing masks in the lunchroom. They will be wearing them to the lunchroom, getting lunch, sitting at the table, but not exactly when they're eating. And that is that's in the plan, that's allowed by the state, that they can wear a mask to the lunchroom, in line, walking to the table. When they sit down, they can eat without their mask. Will 1st graders be required or allowed to wear masks in the classroom? Mr. Dunn, do you want to take that one?
Again, because they'll be cohorted. As of right now, the plan is they will not wear masks. K to 4, they will not wear masks if they are with their class in their classroom. Now, the second part is allowed to wear. I don't know that we will ever stop a child who wants to wear a mask. Nope. Of course, we won't stop a child who wants to wear them. That goes to a personal safety issue, and of course, we'll honor that. But the required piece, that is something right now we are not requiring.
Okay. Let's see. Why is BVA the only option for grades 5 through 12 commitment to an entire semester? Because going back and forth from BVA to the curriculum that the high school and middle school might be doing makes it pretty tough to go back and forth and keep it fluid.
With K4, it is a semester commitment as well, but I want to remind people they will be doing the same pacing and learning targets as the other students in our buildings, and they will be doing that same basic curriculum. It may look differently, and it may translate out differently in that remote environment, but those kids will be pretty much in sync with their other students. So, like if Johnny goes home and he's an in-person, and James next door is remote learning, they'll probably see that they have some of the same type of learning going on. It might look a little different, but if they're learning fractions, they'll be both learning fractions.
Does high school have sufficient air conditioning should the temperature reach 80 degrees plus? I know that last year they installed air conditioning on the second floor. So all the second floor has air conditioning to my knowledge. Is there any acceptable alternative to face masks? No, not based on what the law is saying.
And I want to clarify in the plan and the guidance we've gotten, facial coverings, they're cloth based, and so it doesn't always have to be doesn't always have to be a mask. It could be doesn't always have to be my mask. It can be the gaiters. We're hoping we can convince most of our K4 parents to do they look like a scarf or what you do in the wintertime where they pull it up and they would pull up the whole thing over their nose and mouth. And they're called a gaiter, I guess. And again, it's the guidance is cloth, so it's a cloth based, right, Mark?
Yep.
I hope I didn't mess that up.
Let's see. At this time, masks are not required in K4, while in the classroom, however, masks are certainly allowed. Oh, okay, that's Wendy, sorry. Will there be a time for kids to take a break from their mask in 512? There's a possibility when fifth graders are at recess or when they are outside for lunch during the lunch break or lunch recess. Again, please keep in mind that the 512 idea of wearing a mask is not just Buchanan, that's a state mandate. So we're just trying to follow along and what the state is put down as a mandate.
The last part of that, you're right, kids do touch, everyone does. They touch their face more with a mask on. You try with a new pair of glasses. You find people put a new pair of glasses on, they touch their glasses. This is why we keep hearing and we're preaching all the time, start now. Start now. There's no reason. It's a state mandate. It's been a state mandate for some time. Start now practicing wearing that mask. Mask Up Michigan. Get practicing on it. They talk about the lower level. If they're gaming or if they're on the internet, have them with doing a positive experience that they're doing at home. They wear their mask and they build up some of that comfortability with it. It's like anything else. They will practice what you preach. If you don't preach it at home, they won't practice it out in the street. And that goes for manners. On my soapbox, that goes for manners. That goes for everything, guys. I mean, if you don't practice, preach and practice at home, they're not going to do the same.
Mm-hmm. You're right, Dr. Dunn. I made a note there to make that statement that the best way parents could help us is by starting now. With their children, practicing with the mask on, practicing keeping their hands away from their faces, ensuring that they know how long the 20 seconds is of washing their hands, not touching others. So just continually sharing that information and preaching that information to your children while they're at home now. That's another way that we work together to ensure that everyone is staying safe within our learning environment.
Why not move teachers from class to class? At the secondary level, it becomes an issue from the standpoint of depending what the kid's schedule is. They don't necessarily move from class to class as a cohort like maybe they do at the K4 level. Anything you want to add to that, Dr. Dunn?
Yeah, it's a logistics nightmare because we try to individualize, for course selection. So you've got kids in, say, an English 9 class that may not go to the same math class the next period. And so then trying to move that, it's not that we didn't look at it. I'm just telling you that it's almost, it's just not a reality.
Mr. Dunn, I'll read this one. Will K first graders be able to play freely on the playground, or will they be required to social distance?
Yeah, so K4, we're going to ask the kids to play freely. We're going to ask them to try to, they're kids, so we're going to ask them to try to keep their distance. What we're based on the recess, what's driving our recess protocols and our decisions for recess is the definition of what exposure is. And so the guidance we have about if you were to be exposed, what exposure is that it's 15 minutes or greater, within 6 feet of somebody in that 15 minutes, for the entire 15 minutes, and within an enclosed space. When you think of recess, we're talking it is outside, so that eliminates the indoor. It's 15 minutes or less, that negates the time, and then within 6 feet. And they're not going to be within 6 feet for the entire time. Kids are going to get in each other's space. That happens. But for exposure, they would not technically meet the guidelines of exposure. So we will do our best to say, hey, and we do that by the way, we do that anyway. We try to honor personal space, because if little kids, you'll know as soon as they get into their space, there's pushing, shoving, hitting, and all those things they don't mean to because they are not in fully control of their bodies yet. And so all of a sudden now you've got crying kids on the playground because little mama pushed me down and they didn't mean to, they're just kids. It's just going to make that a little tougher as adults as we police. I hate to say that, but as we work through the playground and say, stay away from each other. And that's the other guidance that we hear from the research. We got to make sure we're not building a language of fear with kids. We don't want to say you can't be near each other. We don't want the fear. We want to say, hey, remember your personal space, guys. Keep some space. Go back to what we know to be true.
Let's see. I might have missed it. 6th grade, 6 through 12 rotating classes. Yes, they will be rotating classes as of right now. It's, let's see. It is strongly recommended in the state plan all K5 kids wear masks. Is that for a reason? It's a strongly recommended.
I can't speak to why the state created that guidance work, but that's the guidance we have.
Let's see. Today, our wonderful governor just signed something stating that everyone over age of 4 had to wear a mask all the time. So, as of the time we put our plan together, that wasn't out there, and I was made aware of that about maybe a half hour before we came online. And so, I'm going to say we're going to have to look into that.
Right. We'll have to dig deeper into all of these things that are coming out today. We still have to break down that order to see how it's going to impact our schools.
So again, fluidity. It's a moving target, and we will do our best.
The state guidelines that were just sent out about childcare and camps are the same as what they have required for the CDC for schools.
Thank you, Wendy. That BVA option, that's just the way again, trying to go back and forth makes it pretty tough as to BVA as a quarter versus a semester. Michigan, not sure about Michigan Virtual. We use Buchanan Virtual, which is the Edmentum platform. If you have specific questions as to the Virtual Academy, I would say please contact Mr. Fry, and we put a link in the BVA document that's in the agenda for you. You can also get it by going to Buchanan Virtual Academy online. Will K4 be able to intermingle with friends from other classrooms while at recess? Okay. Mr. Dunn, I think you kind of addressed that. You want to touch on that again? You're really just trying to make sure they social distance. They may be in their same cohort. That's still kind of being designed, correct?
Correct. And I will tell you, we've talked about how we might be able to quadrant out the place. Good luck. I will tell you, when we can come back to having guests out in the buildings, I welcome everyone to come get the K4 experience and see how we work with kids. Sometimes it's an eye opener when you say, hey, I want you to only play in this one area. So anyway, we're going to do our best.
Comment in here. I know the teachers and staff are under a tremendous amount of stress. I just hate the situation we are in. Believe me, we can all attest to that. As parents, as staff members, as administrators. So thank you. We are trying to do the best we can. All the districts across the county and the state are trying to do the best that we can. Sometime after the 21st, we will make the decision as to will there be a dedicated teachers do remote learning in first grade. As we stressed before, if you're thinking about the remote option in K4, please fill out that survey so we can know we're trying to keep an eye on numbers. Will 8th graders going to high school have a virtual tour or something? That is being checked into and being discussed. There'll be more information as we get closer to school. Kid care. I don't know that answer as to kid care right now. I would say I'm going to leave that alone right now. I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah, we're working on it. It's on the docket. We're working on it. I will say there's only so much we can do in one set. I mean, we're trying to prioritize everything and make sure we get what we need to do. And so I don't want anyone thinking I got the eye on the ball. It's just there's just a lot of those pieces. You have to make a priority list of what has to get done when.
So when we're talking about, oh, go ahead, Mr. Dunn. Sorry.
We're just on it. We're on it.
All right. So to let you know that if you don't think discussions are ongoing, the high school's been having discussions, and so there's I'm going to read this one. The plan for 8-12 so far is they will have staggered dismissal time so that all students are not in hallways together. 8th and 9th will be in cohort groups, and that's coming from a staff member who's on the high school team who's joined in tonight. So thank you for that comment, Mrs. Hess. Let's see. We're going to hand sanitize before and after recess, and then we discussed exposure again. Do our teachers know they have the full backing to go to school? And okay. Let's see. Coming from a staff member at the high school, the most important supply you can do is make sure your child's Chromebook is charged. Okay. The wording on the form makes it sound like if we choose e-learning that we cannot change our minds later. Okay. We can adjust that to make sure that they know that it's a semester-long commitment. Thanks for letting us know that. If that's the way it sounded, we did not mean it that way.
Right. We just needed to know to start.
So I know there was a question out there as to supporting the teachers and so on, and then I'm going to read this from Mrs. Murphy, the union president. The union is not opposed to in-person instruction. We are working hard to make the person feel very safe. I will tell you that our staff has been very supportive, and I know I spoke to somebody today who said that that our back-to-school group had the union and another teacher on it was the only one that they knew of, or there weren't many out there that had teachers on their committee that was working to get kids back into school. So we appreciate the efforts of our teachers being on the committee.
By the way, I want to give kudos. Many of the districts in Berrien County, I'm not going to out them, but did not include union leadership, did not include teachers in their working committees. And we're one of two, I think, that actually did. And I think that's just something positive about what Buchanan always does.
Okay. We cannot fill out the form until we've seen the complete plan. The complete plan will go to the board sometime next week, and then it'll be posted online once it's been approved by the board. Do you want to address anything further with that, Mrs. Robinson?
Just exactly what you said. So our board will have the complete plan. I'll present it. We'll present it to the board. I believe Tuesday night is what we have set up. And as soon as it's approved, if it's Tuesday night that they approve it, we will post it to the website.
And again, that's why we moved to a 21st deadline of August for a decision. We wanted to give as much time as possible so you didn't have to commit before seeing the plan.
Let's see. We have custodians are now in-house for the district, and we've been working with operations to make sure that all the required cleaning has to be done in a timely manner and when it's supposed to be done. And so operations is looking at whether we have to have more custodians on hand or more training. One of the things that's in our plan is a quarantine room in each building, that if a kid was sent down, wasn't feeling well, had a temperature, they would be moved to that quarantine room. That is not a requirement. It's strongly recommended, and our district has made a choice to make sure that we have a quarantine room in each building so that that child's not out in the main office and so on.
Yeah, Mark, our goal is to make sure we get in contact like we always do with sick kids. This is not something new to our district. We have sick kids all the time. And so when we have a sick child, we know they don't want to be here. No one wants to be, at work, so to speak, when you're sick. So we work with our parents to try to get them home as soon as possible, because we know they want to be in a safe, comfortable place especially when you're a little kid. You want to be in a place you feel comfortable in when you're sick. You don't want to be laying in a room someplace. So we're going to work with parents to do that, like we always do.
Okay, again, we'll give you a chance to ask questions at the end. We're just trying to get through as many questions as possible. Yes, your son just needs to show up to school on September 8th. Special ed is still available. Yep.
Yep.
The high school has air conditioning on the second floor. To answer the question about air conditioning again. All right, so that as to transportation, we just might want to be honest and upfront, and this is a concern or a question that superintendents had, and it's just in the plan from the state, so we have to honor it. With respect to transportation, yeah, we're going to put 50 or 60 kids on a bus. We're going to make sure they're going to have masks, and they're going to be sitting right next to each other. And superintendents don't like that, but that's part of the state plan that there's no getting out of. The question has come up is, can parents transport their kids to school? They can. That's not something that is, that we're happy with, but we're trying to live within the guidelines of the state. 6th grade will be changing classes. All right, so Mrs. Chase is giving me the correct answer that, hey, I'm going to read it. So color guard and band. Band is a class, marching band and color guard is not.
Yep.
All right. And please understand, we understand that people aren't happy with everything we're doing. As Mr. Dunn said in the beginning, we're doing the best we can. If you were to go to any town hall plan, You're going to listen to pretty much the same type of things that we're trying to put out there. Most of the plans are kind of consistent across the county.
I just want to remind people, schools are always cleaned. I mean, it's not like because of COVID now we're ultra sensitive to cleaning. We've been cleaning. When we had the flu outbreak in February, January, we had that bad. We worked even twice as hard in our buildings to sanitize because we knew the flu was going through even to our teachers, and so. It's just the world we live in. These things exist. The cold, the flu,
does not hold up
and so
long term.
I mean, COVID's just it's just something new. But we're still going to keep, do what we always do. We're going to clean and clean better, and get better at washing our hands and not touching our face. And that is not because of COVID. Every respiratory disease is the same basis. Don't touch face and wash your hands. We need to lean in as a whole country and learn from other countries that are out there that have been dealing with respiratory diseases for quite some time. And when we look to our Asian counterparts and some of our European counterparts, they've been masking a lot longer for many, many years. And I don't even want to get into that about personal liberties. It's just they leaned into the data, the health piece, and knowing what's best for them. And again, we're going to keep cleaning our schools, and we're just going to get better and better at that and promoting the best health and sanitary practices.
Dr. Dunn, will parents be able to bring kindergartners to school the first day? I would say yes. I didn't know there was anything different, but I'm going to hold on that because I'm not sure.
We're going to punt on that, and we'll have to come circle back because, again, it's right now there's no guests and visitors. So and I will tell you, I've done K4. I know there's mamas out there who like to walk those kindergartners almost every day if they could to their class. That is something we can circle back on. But right now, based on the guidelines, there's no visitors, and I'm sorry about that. And I know it breaks some hearts, but we'll circle back.
I took a note on that one.
Thank you.
All right, kid care we know. We're not taking any offense to the questions you're asking, or if you're upset. We're trying to do the best we can to give you the best answers we know as of right now at 7:26, and we'll try to circle back, as Mr. Dunn said, to some of the ones we don't know. I definitely can sense the kid care is a question, and having two young kids myself, I know what you're saying. So we'll try to get on that in the next couple of days, early next week.
Yeah, I know we were disappointed when we had to close in March about kid care. I know about trying to meet some of the requirements then and the guidelines, because we were really unknown then. Come March to we just were in uncharted territory. And I know Mrs. Lenine was sad not to be able to do that. It's amazing in this community how that's such a positive community partnership we have with our schools and our parents.
All right. Could teachers go live while teaching during their class? And those parents who do not feel comfortable sending their kids in person, could they tune in that way? Is it possible to make that work?
Yes, no, maybe so. There's some legal issues there. I don't want to get into the wonkiness of FERPA, but there's some legal issues about students and their protections and their rights about, and some people not wanting them to be seen. I can't tell you how many times I have to make a phone call because they checked the wrong box and they want their kid in the yearbook, but they didn't want their kid picture, say, in the paper. So there's some issues there. Not that we think that's a great idea. I know some of my teachers have asked about that too. I can just tell you there's some issues there legally we have to be careful about.
Let's see. Marching band and flags are different from regular band, was basically what I was saying. Is there a way we can see what the virtual academy looks like for 5th grade? What assignments are like? What assessments? If If you're talking about Buchanan Virtual, you would have to talk to Mr. Fry in the Buchanan Virtual Academy. Are we watching what all Michigan is doing, all districts? To be honest with you, we are watching what Berrien County is doing, because Berrien County, as of right now, is saying that we're sticking together, trying to do the same a possible plan, whether you're face-to-face or you're doing the virtual piece. So if you went to most of the other plans in the county, you would see a face-to-face option, and then you would see Buchanan Virtual Academy or some type of virtual academy as the other option. Let's see, transportation. Are there any comments on transportation? We pretty much gave everything. You have to write, if you're riding the bus, you have to wear a mask. You can use hand sanitizer if you'd like to. I'm not sure if there's another question besides that. What is the procedure for lockdown if a positive case in any Buchanan school? Right now, we're going to follow, depending on what the health department sends down, which should come out in more detail next week, we will be following all the health department procedures with respect to contacting, tracing, as Mr. Dunn was saying, contacting parents, and then the decision for shutting down the school or a building maybe comes from the health department. Let's see. So what if your kid is having a hard time learning with a mask on, or they have anxiety with it? Will there be a gentler grading for those kids with ADD? Right now, I would say that the requirement by the state at this time, when we're doing whatever type of instruction we're doing now, if we have to go to remote, if that's what you're talking about, is that it has to be rigid. More than what it was in the spring. I think our teachers in Buchanan do a great job of working with any kid, whether they're ADD or if they have other concerns. That's how I'm going to answer that. Mr. Dunn, do you want to add anything to that?
Lots of discussions with teachers about, as we start, about how we start trying to assess and find out what the actual gap in learning is, and then how we respond to that. I will tell you the discussions we've had, Mrs. Dennis and I have had about the real research is that you don't try to fill the hole, because if you have a hole and you're 6 feet deep and now you try to fill the hole, you actually become a 12-foot hole. We are going to work and start where they're at, and then try to bridge the gap as we go. That's the best research. To give you an example of that, I'm going to give you a second grade example. In math, they do double-digit addition and subtraction. They got 2 columns, and they were in first grade, and they maybe struggled and were still mastering how to do the single digit. Well, we're not going to go back to single digit. We're going to start with the double digit, and then we will figure out what skills they do have and don't have from single digit and build that in as we do the double digit. So we try to keep them on grade level and look where the gap is and try to remediate as we go, not trying to go way back and say, well, you didn't have this, so let's go back, let's stop, go back and get it. That's not what the research, that's not what best practice shows. So that we can try to keep them on grade level, but while we fill those gaps. And we're going to we're praying and hoping that we have what we thought we have, which is a great community, doing a great job with our kids at home, and that they're going to come in with a gap, but not as bad as other places, because we have great parents who were working with those kids and doing what they needed to do. I know I'm Pollyanna here, but I'm just saying that's my faith in this community, that we will have some gaps, but we're going to work through them.
Do remote learners qualify for Buchanan Promise? If you're defining remote as being in the K4 program, yes, they do. If you're talking about virtual, they also are, that's part of the plan. that we posted today, that they still are eligible for the Buchanan Promise if they are in the Buchanan Virtual Academy. So I hope that answers that question. Let's see. Oh, I see a couple of people answered. I'm just working through the chat.
This is great. I cannot say enough how great this is. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Will we be able to request assigned bus seating so siblings from both elementary schools can sit together? I think we'll have to write that down. I know that we're going to have assigned seats. I would guess that if your kids or your two siblings get on the bus at the same time, they would probably sit together. But I'm going to just put that and say we're going to need to check on that one.
Makes almost too much sense, though.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll work with the transportation director. Yeah, it does. You're coming out the same house together. You should sit together.
Not gonna say anymore.
Yes. Thank you for that question.
All right. So we're following all the requirements that are put down from the state as to the safety and so on. Air quality, we checked on that today, and we're given confirmation that all the filters will be changed and so on. Let's see. I know one question that came up from staff, and we didn't really address it here, but let's say for some reason a student isn't wearing their mask and they don't have a doctor's note, okay? That is not going to be an option, and that's across the county. If students in K4 are in school face-to-face and they have to switch to remote learning, will the student lessons be available online, or will there be packets again for students distributed at the school every 2 weeks?
That's
you want
a
to take that,
nightmare.
Mr.
I'll tell you, that was we did it.
Yeah.
It was a nightmare. Here's what we know to be true. It will be a remote learning. We will pivot. We will switch to remote learning. That will be online. That is why we designed the remote learning piece to be designed so that you do it at your time and pace. So it's not like traditional school 8 to 4 where you've got to be in class in front of a teacher, where it's 8 to 4 in front of a computer screen. That's not how the remote learning is designed. It's designed where it's on a platform of Google Classroom, and that you access the learning, the videos, the teaching, the activities, all those things through that. And then there's actual time where the teacher will then work with the students in small group or one-on-one, live in person, like through a Google Meet. So that's what it will be. As far as packets, we know we have kids that are going to be in a remote place. You know what I mean? Like the Glean area west of Buchanan. There's some kids in Bertram Township. There's internet is now almost non-existent. And those are things Mrs. Robinson and I were talking about the other day about inequity, and that we have to think about if you don't have internet access and the device, how we bridge that inequity and how we go to that. I don't know we have a true answer other than that might be the reality. If we can't get internet and a device, we will have to make sure we bridge the inequity gap by giving you some sort of packet. I want to give kudos to the middle school. They gave a good launch to us for this. Out of all the middle school kids with remote learning that happened from March to June, they only need to do about 35 packets for the entire school. So it was about 10%. Everybody else was able to do remote. So if that holds true, that it's only 10%, we're in really good shape.
All right. So again, to clarify, if your child was in school last year, they need to just show up to school the first day and they will be ready to go. There was a question regarding IEP services such as special education and speech. Yes, those will continue. whether you're in school or remote.
I want to put out there, we knew we had some, we knew we needed to do some work with that. And so we did offer for some students, oh gosh, this summer, where we provided some remote online pieces with one of our speech pathologists working with kids in providing speech therapy. Again, I know it's not the best, but it was better than nothing. And actually, we found some positivity to that. And there are some parents who didn't like that. And I get that. I mean, it is what it is, but we do our best to try to continue those services.
So there's a question about Google Classroom and so on at the elementary level. The entire district has decided to use, or will be going through, and we will be using Google Classroom as our platform. And so we're working on getting PD together at the start of the year for our staff. I met with the BRESA today to kind of come up with some different videos for parents that we could post if you haven't used that before. So we've got that in place. So we will be using Google Classroom, and there will be some training for that.
I want to give kudos to our teachers. I can't tell you how many user guides and tutorials and things we have given teachers already. We're not expecting them to to be on their own learning, but they're great learners as well as educators. They're already digging into the materials we're sharing with them, and we're seeing people already becoming resident experts for us on their own. And again, that just speaks to the quality of educators we have in Buchanan, that they are doing everything they can for our kids. So I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate our teachers on their well-deserved summer break, that they are still learning and educating themselves. And as
When
we're
I met with BRESA today to talk about remote learning, there's a class that was offered through BRESA, and there's about 100 teachers across the county that are taking that, and 39 of them are Buchanan. So just kudos again to the Buchanan staff. Let's see. Last question. Will there be any packets sent to us preschool start? My daughter's switching over to the middle school and has no idea what's going on other than school is about to start. Meet teachers, information, anything, or just show up and get after it. To that question, I know we talked today, so I would, there's going to be some type of introduction to your child, whether it's virtual or a video or something like that. Look for that as we get closer to school.
I think what he's getting at too is, in the past, and I could be wrong because I'm new still, that in the past we'd have these packets, we'd have those thick registration packets, or like 20 pages. I'm making it up, but it felt like 20 pages we gave, and you completed for every kid. If that is what you're talking about, we were exploring some way to have a printout that you would then self-correct with information, and that would, but again, all that beginning of school year stuff, principals will get out once we're ready to move on that piece.
If you have interest about BVA, hop onto the BVA site, or you can click on the link that we put in the agenda, which is kind of the facts about BVA, and there's a link to the BVA site there, along with Mr. Fry's email and his contact information. Last year, my son's bus driver wouldn't allow the windows to be open. He's on the bus for 2 hours. Well, this year he'll be on the bus. If he's on the bus, hopefully it's shorter than that. But if he is, the windows will be open as long as the weather is, we talked about that. I think they're going to have the windows open on the bus.
Yes.
They have no choice. They have no choice.
Correct.
And I will tell you, those buses with the heat, even in the winter, they are hot boxes. Having ridden on one, there's no reason they can't in the winter have some windows cracked a little. They are hot. Which is great. That means our kids are warm and safe and getting to school what we want. But that's I'm just saying that is not an option. They have to be, the guidance says, get those windows down. Sorry, I didn't mean to overspeak.
Let's see. If your child is supposed to participate in dual enrollment of fifth-year program, will that be available through the virtual learning? We'll have to write that question. I'm not going to be able to answer.
Yeah.
So dual enrollment.
Brian Pruitt.
In fifth year. Okay. first day. Okay. Will our children be able to wear face shields instead of a mask? No, unfortunately, they will not. That is a state mandate. I see the fifth enrollment in fifth-year program. That's a question we have to ask. For moccasin, would it be appropriate to ask maybe trying to keep some of the kids from the previous year in the same class to keep some familiarity with students since they have all the restrictions to get used to? Mr. Dunn, I'll let you answer that one.
So again, when we look at class lists, this is something we don't take lightly. We look at trying to make the best fit for kids. And so in, say, second grade, the group of kids that were together were chosen to be in a class based on the fit of that teacher. Not every teacher is the same. We're human beings for a reason. We're all different. So when we think about the teachers that go to the next grade, they may not all be the same or like. And so we look at the strengths of our students, we look at the strengths of our teachers, we look at the needs of our students based on the strengths of our teachers, and we try to make the best appropriate placement. And yes, we do take some consideration if a parent had a preference or we can't always honor that, but we do. We're not indifferent. We do listen and we try to make placement as possible when they have that. So I will tell you, because we're not ready to share because of logistics and pieces that may have to move, but we do have some consistency there. It's not unheard of that you'll have kids, and for that, say for instance, may have one second grade teacher. They'll see some of the same kids in their next class, but it won't be. It just depends on the needs of those students.
There's a couple comments in there about the concern about the bus, and we understand where your concerns are with the bus. My kids will be riding the bus. They'll be wearing a face mask. We're following all the guidelines, required guidelines, and even the strongly recommended as to you have to wear a face mask. We're putting hand sanitizers on there. We're doing the assigned seats. We're doing what we're doing. We're doing the best we can do that's required and to the best of our ability. You do also have the opportunity to bring your child to school if you'd like. Yep, there is a comment on here. Yes, the buses will be cleaned before and after each route.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Many parents have questions regarding BVA. It might be helpful if Mr. Fry posted something so to see what the program wrote. We posted it tonight for you, ladies and gentlemen. It's in the agenda. It'll also be on the resource page by Monday.
And then I want to just reiterate to everyone, continue to check the website for updates. So there were questions about where would this be posted. Any updates will be posted to the website, which automatically carries over to like an announcement on Facebook. So you want to follow us on Facebook, join us on Facebook so that you can get those dings as we update information.
All right, so this comes directly from Angela Port, who's a transportation director. Transportation will also be using spray disinfectant after drop-offs at the high school and middle school before loading any elementary students. The same practices we followed to take kids home.
Thank you, Mrs. Port.
We disclose the numbers it look like for K4 online thus far. I don't know that we have those numbers with us tonight. Okay. All right. Some districts are requiring a face shield if students and staff have doctor's notes to not wear a mask. Is that going to be expected to be? Again, we are going to strongly encourage that. That's our status right now. Let's see. My daughter has asthma and it's hard to wear a mask for long periods of time. She is going into 9th grade. Is there going to be periods of time where they can get a break, shut down? What is the plan? Whoops, sorry, I went too far. I clicked one too far, sorry. So the question as to asthma and taking a break because of the mask, I think that's something you'd want to work out with the office, and the fact that she has asthma, there might be something there with a doctor's note that you can work with. Let's see. If we send the kids to school, then it gets shut down. What's the plan? We'll move into remote learning. Okay. Again, remote learning is different than Buchanan virtual.
And we will have more information on that as we solidify that. We are, I want everyone to understand there was two big pieces of lift to do. We had to do in person in that plan, and then the next piece was remote learning in that plan. And we're feeling pretty good about being 90% at completion with the in-learning plan, making tweaks and changes and getting input. And that allows us now to switch gears and start bringing the remote learning piece up to full speed and working on that. And like I said, it's hard. There's only so much time in the day, and I'm very proud of the team and everybody being able to make these switches and pivoting as we are trying to get the big piece and then the next big piece, and then start getting to a granular level of the nitty-gritty in each of those.
Are spectators going to be allowed at football games? I would say that is to be determined right now. Does attendance count against a child who have to quarantine after testing? So, as of right now, okay, the state counts attendance for any time you're not at school. We have talked as a district of putting something in their Power School account that if they were out for some reason like that, it would show up a little bit differently. So I would say that right now that's to be determined, but it definitely counts as an absence as of right now. Even if you call in, we know where they're at, they're excused, but again, excused does not erase that absence. I know the high school, if you're talking about the high school attendance policy, I know they're in discussions on that. If you choose remote learning, will our kids be mastering skills of moving on, or will they be required to spend a certain number of days on assignment and skills that they have already mastered? Dr. Dunn, do you want to take that one?
Like any good learning, we have to do the assessment piece somehow and figure out where are they at. And once we know where they are at, then that's what drives us moving forward. So there will be some sort of way. We're still working through some of that, but we will assess them somehow. We will get an understanding of where they are at, and then we will move forward with how to keep them on grade level and try to remediate what they're not on grade level. And as always, our teachers work hard to differentiate. So, we do have kids who are above the average. And that makes that difficult sometimes, as having been one of those kids in school, that, having good teachers who say, okay, you might need something different because you're above where we need to be. And that becomes some differentiation that they do on the fly. And we would continue to do that best practice.
Comment on here, shield should be an option for these students. Please keep in mind that anything we're talking about with respect to face masks or face coverage and shield is based on the requirements that the state put down. It's not Buchanan deciding that. Yes, this is being recorded. Okay, we already know about kid care. We're going to make a decision on that as soon as possible. Let's see. I think there was a question about SPED services again. We're going to still have SPED services. That's a requirement by law.
Oh, I do want to share what we do know so far. Mrs. Falkenstein, who is now our special ed coordinator, has, for those, if anyone's out there with a student with special needs and has an individual education plan or an IEP, we will start the year, she said, doing those IEP conferences virtually or online in a we will. So I don't want anyone thinking like, because we have lots of parents who are great advocates for their students and know that like come September 30th, they know that annual conference is coming for their child, and they're going to meet because of the way things are set up. You're still meeting, but it will just be in a virtual way, so that or even on the phone, so that we can still have those conferences that have to happen.
If our kids plan on coming back to school after the first semester, are they eligible to play sports? As long as we're following the MHSAA guidelines, I would say yes. Let's see. How many absences are you allowed in a school before you get held back in a grade? Right now, there's no absence policy that I know of at the elementary and middle school. The high school used to have a policy in place that may be debatable this year. So if you have a specific question as to the absence policy, I would say contact the individual building.
I just want to say, on behalf of elementary, we're going to work with parents. I mean, when your school tells you can't come to school because you have something, we work through that. I don't want to bring up these bugaboos, but we have it happen with lice. We have it happen with lots of other things where we say you have to stay home until you get this fixed, and so we try to work through that. And I know you probably heard from me, I preach about you want to keep your kid in school as much as possible, because after 95, we talk about 95% of the year being in school, that's 10 days absent. And, we want your kids to stay home if they're sick. And if we're telling you to stay home because they're sick, these are things we have to work through and be very cognizant and understand, because we don't want to be punishing kids because we're telling you, hey, you're sick, stay home.
All right. So, believe it or not, we're at the end of the
really?
chat.
Good. Is that where? I'm sorry.
All right. So, as far as I can see, we answered as many as I can see. I'm at the bottom of my chat list. So, I guess this is the first time I've ever done a townhouse meeting. So, I would like to try to figure out how we can give people a chance to ask some questions, live. I'm thinking maybe that if you want to chat live, do we want to try opening it up, or do we want to ask them to put their name in there? I'm not sure. I know, Ms. Robinson, you're controlling the access.
So I would, what I think of as a good way is to put their name in the chat window. That way you can kind of take it in order.
Yep.
And then we'll work through it and get as many answered as possible.
So if we'll put you on the honor. If you can put your name in there, if you'd like to chit chat, I will read the name and let you answer your question. We'll have to open it up to everybody, but if you guys could please be on, just try to honor the time, okay? We will try to get to any questions that you want to ask live. So type your name in there if you want to talk live, and we will work down through those people that want to chat live with us. We'll try to answer your questions. We hope that we've answered as many questions as we possibly could tonight to do the best we could. We'll try to follow up on those. I've got at least 10 or 15 questions here I know we have to try to follow up on.
Mark, would you add the SAT question to the list too?
I didn't see that, but
we'll taking SAT. I know we don't have an answer for it, so that's why I just saw that. So make sure we add
Was there a question about will they take the SAT?
Yes.
Okay.
And probably how. So we'll need to.
I know that's going to be coming out.
Yep.
I know that right now they're trying to use a plan in place from the state to take SAT. Okay. Let's see here. All right. Well, Taylor, you just typed a question, so it's going quick. Does a COVID positive test student get to return to in-person schooling? Yes, there will be a plan in place by the health department. You have to stay out X number of days and so on. But yes, to Taylor, to your question. What is the start date of school? September 8th.
And we're going to put a big box on our website that says school begins September 8th. So that is coming. I know our tech director is on the call and is listening. So we're going to add that to our website.
And regardless of remote or in person, September 8th.
Yep. September 8th.
September 8th. That's it.
All right. I'm still waiting for somebody who wants to ask a question live.
This is great. This is great, team. What a wonderful job you have done in answering and responding to parents.
Mike, to your question, yes, September 8th, school starts.
Brian Davison. Oh, go ahead, Mark. You control this. I'm not going to jump in.
Nope, go ahead. If you know, I think you have to can you see Brian, or do you have to unmute everybody, I think?
Can you see me and hear me?
Oh,
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yep. Go ahead.
I'm the building engineer for St. Joseph County, and I have dealt with this at a level. Kudos to you guys for this. This is, like you said, it's not a textbook. There's nothing that we could go back on to rely on this. We're on page 1 with this. Um, do you guys really feel safe bringing these kids back to school with the numbers that Michigan has based on the lower amount that Indiana has, and they've closed down their schools? Do you feel confident in that?
Trish, I'll let you answer that one.
so thank you. So what I am actually just moving on is not my gut feeling. So it's going to be about what is data driven. What our guidelines are saying is how and what is best for the community overall and our students. And we know that students face-to-face is the best way to for our kids to be instructed and to learn. So we are working really hard in making the best decision by giving our community options, and it's based off of those two things: the guidance that we've been given, and the data that we have.
Okay, I gather the data. I'm in control of the county city building, which is 14 stories, 4 courthouses, the county jail, the juvenile justice center, all these places. We can't even get adults to comply with the guidelines of these CDC requirements and PPE requirements. How do you think that you will be able to enforce children to do that? I'm curious.
We've talked about that as administrators, Brian, and I think from the standpoint of the children, if it's the law, and if they're not going to do that, they won't be allowed in school. That's
and that's with any correct, and that's with any rules or expectations that we have in our classrooms as we teach our kids.
Okay,
for the most part, they comply with that.
I'm curious, who will enforce that? I work for a local government, and we can't enforce that. We have a sheriff's department that works in our building. You don't even have that in your school. Who will enforce that and make sure that that is applied? I'm curious. And I have a health department within my building, and we can't enforce it. So I'm curious as to who, not to discredit your staff, that you will be able to enforce that.
And I'm going to go back to our expectations. We expect kids to come into our classrooms and come into our schools and follow our rules, follow our policies. And we know that there are kids that are going to be on the extreme. There will be kids who will challenge those expectations and rules. And then those who challenge those, we'll give them the reminder. And then if there is continuous, challenges, them not following it, just like Mr. Curlin said, they won't be allowed back in the school. So there'll be some outliers, Mr. Davidson. We can't say that everyone is going to comply, just like you're dealing with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a huge risk. No disrespect to you, ma'am. I mean, this virus started in China. It came to this country. China shut it down. I mean, they shut it down. They had rules. They had regulations. Unfortunately, I mean, you could disagree or agree with me, and that's your opinion. The United States has an opinion. There's about a third of a population that, because we live here in these United States, that we don't have to be told what to do. We don't have to have rules. And that's why this has grown to the grotesque level that it has. The numbers in this United States are unreal. They're unreal in the state that we live in, Michigan, Indiana. I've lived in both states. It's unreal. I just don't know how you folks feel safe when we live literally 2 or 3 miles across the state line, that you feel that you're safe to put these kids back in school. I'm curious how you have precautions or whatever to put that in place. I'm curious.
Well, I know we just spent a couple of hours going over everything that we are doing based off of the guidelines. So that's how we are assuring ourselves that we are doing the right thing. It's because the guidelines that have been presented by our government, our State Department, and what we are following those.
And your guidelines are based off Whitmire, which I admire her to an extent. The governor of Michigan, she has had the most strictest guidelines. She has been scrutinized this whole time for her guidelines, and her guidelines are even getting more stricter now. And you folks are going to open up school, and you're basing that off the governor or health officials or what? I'm curious.
It's all of the above.
Forced from the state. All the guidelines we're following are from them.
Unbelievable. Well, I hope and pray that not one kid gets sick, not one teacher gets sick or die, because that's what's going to happen. One kid's going to get sick, one teacher's going to get sick, and then you're going to shut it down. It's going to be open for a week. That's what's going to happen. Same thing happened in Mishawaka. They opened up football practice. 1 week later, a Mishawaka football coach and a soccer coach got sick, COVID-19. They shut it down. I've been in the trade for 25 years, and I said I would rather have a tool in the drawer that I would never use, but you know what? One day I might need that tool, and it'll be there. I would use the same precautionary measures on this situation. I would hope that you people would derive and go in that direction, and if you choose not to, then I don't want to be the guy that has to come back on this via email or whatever and say I told you so. I don't want to be that guy.
Well, you know what, Mr. Davidson, I mean, like I said at the beginning of this meeting, these plans are fluid, and I can't say and guarantee you or anyone on this call that we will not have to do that, which is why right now we are giving all families options. And I know families, this is tough, parents, this is really tough. And I know you're going to make the best decision for your families based off of your needs, based off of your kids, and based off of your feelings right now. You're going to go with that. And we certainly appreciated that. Our job tonight was to give you the information, take some time with you to answer your questions, giving you more information to help you make that decision for your family. And I cannot, and I will not guarantee anyone that we will not have to shut schools down. I will not do that. I would be a liar if I did that.
I would not ask you of that. I would never ask you of that.
Okay. All right. And then I just want, the whole community to understand that may happen. Yeah, and I just ask for your.
I have 6 kids in my house. Trust me, I understand.
Yeah. Okay. And I have 4. So yeah. So
I have kids in South Bend School Corp, and I have kids in Buchanan.
Okay.
I get it.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to. Thank you, Mr. Davidson. Let's see. Do we have anybody else who would like to?
Yeah, you got Melissa Carl. Oh, it says Melissa Carl's left the meeting.
Okay.
Well, if she comes back in, we want to make sure we circle back to Melissa.
All right.
I have both her kids this year. I want to make sure we get her. Brittany Martin, please, it says.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi. I just wanted to quickly chime in. We have such a large community of supportive parents. So I'm just wondering, would it be beneficial to put together a list of potential supplies that maybe parents could donate money towards, like plexiglass dividers? Just put up a list of things that could be beneficial in the classroom, like air purifiers or just anything. We know that the district is stretched pretty thin, but we do have families who maybe work with plexiglass and can utilize scraps and just kind of put together some stuff that would be beneficial in different classrooms and give us an opportunity to help where we can.
Absolutely, we can do that. We'll work with the core team and our department leads and getting that up. We don't know how soon we can get it up, but believe me, we will have it up.
Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
a great idea because
That
of
is.
all of the things with state regulations. We don't really know. I can't go out and buy something. I don't know if it can fit in the classroom. But if you put up what's appropriate and acceptable, I would be the first one to jump in and say, yes, it's going to help my son for sure. So if you came up with a guideline for what would fit in the classroom, I think a lot of parents would be happy to put money towards that. And also, I really just want to tell you guys, thank you so much for this. I know that this is extensive, and I mean, you guys have spent so much time on the phone here, but you've really incorporated the community. You've brought us in. You've allowed us a voice in this. All three of you, wow, well done. I just really want to say thank you.
Hey, Brittany, are you still are you PTO president at Ottawa this year?
Currently, yep.
Currently, okay, good. So
You need some money.
Well, preach, girl. So again, we want to leverage those. You know what I mean, and that's why it's nice having people like you on here tonight as well. We want to make sure we leverage, our PTO, PTM, because you're already in the community. And we'll need to make sure we leverage that as we look through the, looking for support.
Absolutely, and honestly, I can't think of a better way to spend money on, than protecting our kids. So, I mean, if there's anything that the PTO can do, absolutely ask away. But I also know there's a ton of other parents who maybe work, at the glass companies or the steel mill and can bring home some steel that they can put plexiglass dividers together. And I feel like if we all just pitch in, we can figure this out together. And I think we can as a community. So whatever you need, put it up, and I'm sure this community will come. We'll come together.
Thank you, Mrs. Martin.
Yeah.
So I think Melissa Carl's still with us, and we were waiting for.
Melissa, are you still there?
Oh, she said it booted her.
Yeah. Did she come back?
Saw her in the list.
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Hey, good to hear you.
Technical difficulties. I'm on my iPhone and it's different than me doing on the iPad or the laptop. It's my first time, so I apologize. So once again, I said in my comments, thank you very much. You guys have been just so awesome through all of this. We were all thrown a curveball. This isn't just an individual person. This is us as a community, as a state, as a nation. So once again, I want to thank you, everybody on your team, for going above and beyond for our children and for us parents, because I know that we can be kind of crazy. So I, however, was not able to get into the beginning of your group this evening. So if this is a question that you've already answered, I apologize. When are we going to get the bus routes, like the times that I know that I can have the boys out and ready for the bus? Because I know that it's going to be a learning curve with the bus this year.
Okay.
I think that's something we'll have to check on and get back to you. I wrote it down.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And that was all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you see anybody else on there, Mike, that wants to?
I'm looking. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be present. That's one of those things.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be present, but yet I'm looking. I'm not seeing anybody. Please make sure we scroll through that again to make sure I didn't overlook somebody. Oh, Rachel Tidy put a question. We might want to see. She asked, I want to know if we can pull our children if it becomes a problem and have them do virtual, or do they have to go a whole semester?
So if they're face to face, is what she's.
I don't want to make assumptions. I'm assuming though, Trish, that they start in person. So if Rachel, if you're there, clarify your question. We really want to get you an answer. But I assume you are saying they start in person and then you want to move. What is it you don't want to stay, and what's your option if you don't want to stay? And I don't really want to answer that off the cuff, but I know what my gut says.
Yeah, let's discuss and get back because there'll probably be more parents, and we'll add that either to the FAQ sheet.
Right. I don't know why they couldn't. You know what I'm saying? I know BBA
Mhm.
they can come at any point. I'm thinking, you know, K4. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I know BBA you can do whenever. I know that.
Mhm.
BBA you can come whenever. That's not. It's. I'm just a little worried about K4, and I
Yeah, because
think.
there might be a lot.
I'm here.
Oh,
Okay.
there's Rachel.
Hey.
He's gonna be first grade, and he has ADHD diagnosis, and I don't foresee him being able to wear a mask continuously like they're wanting. And I don't want it to become a problem where he has to be booted from school. I'd rather have the option that I can teach him myself if that's the case.
Yeah, I think these are things, Mrs. Rams. We'll work through these things because I think we want to make sure we make the best. We make the best options for kids. You know, I did my research and dissertation on school choice, so I'm a proponent of we make the best choice for kids, and if we can be your choice in some fashion with remote learning, you know, absolutely. And so I think that was one of our plan B and C and D things we keep talking about, like, is, you know, I mean, how do we make best choices?
Okay, because I know being a certified and licensed teacher that I'm more than capable of teaching him, but I'd rather he had that face-to-face interaction than be stuck at home with just me.
And God love you for knowing that.
Thank you.
You got to know when to send them off.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Do we have anybody? Do you see anybody?
Mhm.
There's one question on there about kids getting sick at school. Something along those lines, to send them on the bus or the door. No, if we find out that a kid is sick at school, they will not be allowed to ride home on the bus. That's your question, Mike. That's in our plan.
Correct. And we, again, this is something that's not new. We have kids who get sick all the time at school, and we do not ever want to have to send a kid on the bus. And now with COVID, without a doubt, if it is COVID, and that's going to be the tricky part, we're going to work through the guidance the Berrien County Health Department gives us, because let's say we do really well and everything's great, but flu season hits like November. We have to get really good at going through those checklists that the county health department gives us to make sure that we don't say a kid might just be the flu. You know what I mean? And we're going to learn and get better and work with our county health department hand in hand.
Mhm.
I want to just give
And there's a
kudos.
question-
I know Nicole Britton was on the state committee with the governor, and I think we are we are very fortunate as a community and a county to have had that kind of voice, because I think she's only one of two, if I remember correctly, of the health department being on that committee, and it's a very large state. So it was nice that Berrien County was represented.
So the other question that's next is, so the bus driver can refuse to pick up a kid in the morning if they're sick. We are not going to be screening kids at the bus. That's not the Berrien County Health Department's guidelines. If they happen to get on the bus and they're sick when they get to school, they have a fever, you know, they're not feeling well, they come down, then we'll work from there. But the county is not screening kids prior to getting on the bus.
And we preach all the time, if your kid is sick or is feeling well, err on the side of the best judgment and keep them home. I know we're guilty of it, about beating parents down about get your kids to school, they need to be here. Absolutely, they need to be in school. But if they're sick, we know that they're not going to be in their best situation to learn either if they're in sick. So please, we keep reiterating, if they really are sick, if they have a fever, keep them home. But then you've got to monitor that as a parent to say, you know, you got to make sure that they're not pulling the wool over your eyes and say, I'm sick today. You know, if they truly are sick, please keep them home.
Aaron, to your question about fifth grade self-contained, yes, it is. Why is that not an option for Buchanan remote for fifth grade? That was a district decision that the middle school would, because it's considered technically a 5-7 in our eyes, that fifth grade would not be an option. I like Rebecca's comment about finding a parent.
What was that? I'm sorry.
There was a comment on there about a parent being fined for sending their kid to school sick, and it's like, yep. Hey.
Oh.
Yes, it does happen all the time. Okay. Do you have any other parents that want to, or community members that want to ask a question?
Mark and Mike, did you guys see the vaccination question?
I'm sorry.
Can you just read it, Patricia, if you have
Oh,
it?
I
in
just
front of you?
passed it.
Yeah, okay, there it is.
I just passed.
You foresee COVID vaccinations mandatory to attend. Trish, I'll start. You tag, okay?
Yes.
As with any vaccinations, that is something that comes from a state level that translated through a health department. So, for instance, over time, you see as a parent that you have certain vaccinations you have to get for your child to attend school. And then there are times like, it's been a while since I've done secondary, but there are some vaccinations that are asked for, like the second dose of it's PPV or something. They're asked for but not mandated, but the first dose is mandated. And I apologize for my ignorance. I've been in elementary from secondary way too long, but that comes from a higher level. And so we typically, as school systems and districts, tend to follow that guidance and not get out of the realm of mandating our own when it comes to vaccinations, because that brings up other legal issues and problems. And I apologize if I overstepped there, Mrs. Rams, but
No, we follow the guidelines from the health department and from the state level with those vaccinations. My experiences have been that at times families may have certain beliefs, and there are waivers that are out there. But all of that comes from the health department, and then we're educated at the school level regarding those vaccinations and what are required and when can parents waive vaccinations.
Okay. Do we see any other?
So we'll post information as that comes out too.
God, that's going to be ever changing if we even get one in January.
Yes.
All right. If I see one from Jessica, I'm going to read it. If we enroll our children in virtual, remote, can we back out of it last second if things change, such as rolling back to phase 3, making 5th grade eligible for remote learning with a Buchanan teacher? To answer that question, if we are in phase 4 and we move to phase 3, the entire middle school will be a remote learning venue.
But this is the situation where I have a 5th grader who's enrolled in BVA, and now we are moving into remote learning for everybody. Can I move from BVA to the remote? And thank you, Jessica, for keeping that language. I think I understood your vocabulary language, that she said virtual/remote. That's a great question.
I'm making a note. We're going to have to go back to that one.
And then Rachel Tidy had one about, are we having preschool this year? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I will say we're sorry, preschool can't be done as a remote option. On our remote learning plan, it's K4, and I'm just sorry about that. I think that was some of the guidance. And I love having Mrs. Robinson. Trish is a PK1 expert.
Yeah, right. Yay!
And I'm just telling you, so I'm waiting to hear more guidance, and I know Mrs. Denison is too. So any direction that if we could do something like that, of course we will lean in and take her direction.
Okay, Mrs. Chase commented about that. So she says guidance from GSRP is coming, and that is at the state level.
Okay.
Someone said, did we ask the grading? Did you address grading?
I don't know that we addressed it, but I do know that the state guidelines this time versus the spring, that it has to be rigorous. And so I know that all of our plans are going to have attendance requirements involved, whether you're at school or remote. And so there will be grades in place.
Yeah, and I'm going to use this as a great platform for anyone who's out there still listening about. And I don't know, Russell, what grade your kids are in, but we're looking at K4. We're trying to do more of a standards-based approach to grading. I know there's a lot of language and a lot of information, but we're looking at about making sure we assess, grade, whatever you want to say, our students appropriately. But yeah, as Mr. Curlin said, we still got to do something with taking grades and giving them credit in whatever fashion. It won't be like it was in March to June, where it was we're asking you to do this, but we're not taking credit or grades. That goes away. We will be taking, which will then change the whole impetus of why about kids being more focused and engaged, hopefully, in that remote learning piece or virtual learning piece.
Let's see. I'm looking at the high school level. Credit or no credit can impact our seniors. Are they going to earn what they earn? My answer to that would be yes right now.
I just want to give kudos that when we went March to June, we had to make that pivot to closing school down. The high school worked really hard. Those teachers worked really hard with students trying to make sure they got what they needed for requirements and things. And Mrs. DeMaio and Mr. Pruitt will continue to work on that. But they worked really hard to make sure everyone who could graduate, getting what they needed to be done. And there comes a point, though, where at that level, the student has to have some ownership in their learning or his or her learning, that it can't always be an out that, well, you didn't do. The student has to have some engagement too. Soapbox for another time.
All right. Any others that we think we missed? I'm at the bottom of my screen.
Yeah, I've not seen anything.
Did anybody else want to ask a question live? We still looks like we still have 60 people on board, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
Preschool will also start on September 8th.
Good question.
I don't know. We'll get that out. We'll find out what. I vaguely remember Mrs. Dennis and I were talking a little bit. I don't want to quote anything. I just know that we were talking about that. There we and I know someone said there's more guidance coming. I know Mrs. Dennison said that there is more guidance coming. So we will get that out. Okay. I'm not seeing anything else. Team, what am I missing? You missing?
Let's see. Question from Rachel as to kindergarten questions. You could email Mrs. Dennison at Ottawa.
Yes.
Will speech and special education be provided through BVA? Yes. Okay. Mr. Robinson, I think it's about 8:30 and I don't see any more questions out there.
Okay. Well, this was great. This was great. I appreciate all of you, and I appreciate the families who have stayed on, working with us and being patient with us while we, work through this plan. So I just thank you. And more information is coming. So just keep looking at our website, listening to our robocalls that go out, because we will keep you updated as much as possible and as quickly as possible.
All right. Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us for 2.5 hours. We hope we've been able to answer the majority of your questions. We do know we have some we still have to get back to you on. So look for those answers sometime next week, and we'll try to keep posting things to the website. We will try to get the recording of this up by Monday. I have nothing else.
I just want to say again, thank you to Mrs. Robinson. Trish, I know that she probably thought about this when she was interviewing, and I just want to say, God bless you for not leaving and running for the doors And this community is much better off because we have you with us, and I can't say thank you enough. That it's just you willingly chose to and I can't say how much we love and appreciate that.
I appreciate. Thank you. It is an honor to be here. So this is what I signed up for. All right, guys.
All right, I'm out of here. Good
Good
night, everyone.
night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.